All right. Welcome everyone. I want to welcome everyone to this Q&A. Again, want to welcome everyone to this Q&A. A few questions came in that whatever we didn't get to on Tuesday. So we're gonna see if we get through them. So the question we dealt with before, we're gonna again deal with Avram Avinu a little bit, or patriarchs a little bit, and the question was before that we dealt with is, why was it God told Abraham to sacrifice Isaac, right? But the angel told him to stop, right? So that we discussed, and the question after was, why did Jacob and his descendants have to go to Egypt if Abraham's faith passed the test? Right. Also another interesting question. Right. So the reality is, what was the Torah tell me? Torah tells me that Abraham says, and he asks God, he says, Ma Eda, says, I want to know your attributes. Right? Moshe Rabbeinu also asked seemingly a similar question. In other words, they want to see how God runs the world. So to Moses, what does God say? Nobody can see my face and live. And he says, go by the side over here. I'll see you by the cliff. You'll see me by the cleft of the rock, whatever it is. You'll see me from the back. The commentaries explain, what does it mean? See me from the back. See me from the back means you're not going to understand what you're going through now. You're only going to understand it in hindsight. In other words, you can't understand how God runs the world. That is impossible. We don't understand why we go through certain trials. So God says you can only understand the hindsight, maybe. But you can't understand it now. How divine providence works, we can't understand. I get this question a lot. I'm going through this, I'm going through that. What's the measure for measure? Like I know. We don't know what necessarily the measure for measure is. Sometimes obvious. A lot of times not. And a lot of times we go through things, we have no idea why. It could be we did something, foolish. We went against Coffman's 614th commandment, don't be stupid. Could be something to do with our soul. God wants us to go through certain things and fix up our soul, whatever we went through. One possibility. Right? So we don't know. Essentially, we don't know. So that was the answer that God gives to Moshe. What about Abraham? Abraham says, Ma Eda, I want to understand. I want to understand your attributes. I want to understand how you run the world. And what does God answer? God answers, your progeny, your offspring, are going to go to a land they don't know. And they're going to suffer. And not only are they going to suffer, but I'm going to judge those people that made you suffer. Strange answer. Right? First of all, why is Abraham's progeny seemingly punished? That they're going to end up in a land not their own, i.e., we understand to be Egypt. And what's going to happen while they're there? They're going to suffer. So first of all, what do they do to have to go there? That's the first question. Second of all, why do they suffer there? Third of all, the question's going to be, what's the connection to what Abraham did? Abraham seemingly asked the same question as Moshe, right? As Moshe Rabbeinu. He gets a very different answer. So the Gemara says, the Gemara in the Darim gives three reasons why this happens. One of the reasons is when he goes to save Lot's, his only remaining relative, right? It says he took 318 people. Now some say that's gematria of Eliezer, that him and Eliezer went to fight. Nobody else. That was the big miracle. They wiped out, right? 4 kings against 5 kings, right? Wiped out 5 kings. Just him and Eliezer. Others say no, take it literally 318 men. Where did the 318 men come from? So the Gemara says he took people that were studying, were learning, and he took them to war. He took rabbinical scholars and told them to go out and fight. Now, wouldn't you say, if it's a milchemes mitzvah, if it's a mitzvah ordained by God, in other words, God says the mitzvah to go out there, they go to the prophet says, yeah, I gotta go fight. That means everybody goes fight. Everybody goes to fight. Even somebody just recently married. Because what does the Torah tell me? Someone recently married for a year. They don't go to war. Right? They don't really leave where they are. He's got an obligation to make his wife happy. So seemingly, Abraham's punished, and his offspring are punished because he did that. There are other reasons also. Remember a few other reasons as well. Now that being the case, seemingly they ask a similar question. Abraham asks a similar question to Moshe, gets very different answer. Now, when you look at it at face value, we see that the Jewish people, how they end up in Egypt. It's not direct. How they end up, I shouldn't say direct, all divine providence. Right? Joseph goes out to the brothers. Right? Jacob tells them to go out to the brothers. Now the brothers say, oh, here comes a dreamer. They condemn him to death. I mean, the whole story in of itself, what exactly this means, and how they judge him so harshly. Regardless, they put him in a pit. They decide not to kill him. They take him out. They sell him. He goes down to Egypt. Then he gets thrown in jail. Right? He goes to Potiphar's house, gets thrown in jail. Then you have the dream. He interprets the dreams of the baker and the wine steward. Dreams come true. Then he goes to Pharaoh. Then Pharaoh makes him, number 2 in command. He interprets Pharaoh's dreams. And the brothers come down because there's no food, there's a famine. But he realizes who they are, treats them harshly for whatever reason, I'm not going to get into now. And he makes them come to Egypt. Right? And he gives a sign to Jacob that Jacob's still alive. And Jacob says, I got to see my son before I die. And they all go down to Egypt. That's how they end up in Egypt. And then they multiply tremendously in Egypt. Pharaoh is tremendously afraid of them and he enslaves them. So there's a decree here. God has to orchestrate it in a certain way to get the Jewish people, who are going to become the Jewish people, get them to Egypt. How does he manifest it that way? Through Joseph. Right? Through Joseph and Tzaddik. That's how he does it. So they end up in Egypt, they suffer, they almost get destroyed spiritually. They almost reach the 50th level of impurity, which if they would have reached that level of impurity, we wouldn't be here today. Jewish people wouldn't be here. It would have disappeared, so God takes them out early. Okay, so seemingly what Abraham did had an effect, and this is actually going to go in the next question, had an effect on his offspring. Right? Don't we always say what we do can affect not just ourselves, can affect our spouse, can affect our kids. Our actions as Rabbi Chaim of Volozhin and Nefesh Chaim, famous students of the Vilna Gaon of Elijah Vilna, more than 250 years ago, wrote this epic work, Nefesh Chaim, literally the soul of life. And most people learn the fourth gate. What's the fourth gate? The importance of learning Torah. And that's when he comes out against Hasidim and whatever, but the importance of learning Torah. The first three gates, a lot of it's steeped in Kabbalah. But regardless of that, what does he say at the beginning? He says at the beginning, don't think our actions don't matter. What's one example he gives? Eating from the tree of knowledge. One event totally changed history. Brought that to the world, not a Jewish concept. Right? Totally not a Jewish concept. But God had to go to plan B. So what happens? You see, the repercussions. The repercussions for what we do. Repercussions, the environment we're in, how it affects us. But you're going to say, come on, doesn't the mission Pirkei Avos? Doesn't say ethics of our fathers, we're born against our will, we die against our will. Right? In parentheses, Coffman would say, guess what? You still have to live. Still got an obligation to live. So if that's true, are we in charge of what parents are? No. Family? No. Socioeconomic situation? No. So God puts us in a situation that's best for our soul. We may not think so. We may not understand. And our soul might have to suffer, go through all kinds of things. Okay, that's not the topic for now. See, a lot of topics we're not going to hit now. We've spoken about it before. What's the point? The point is divine providence. So there are repercussions. They can have massive repercussions. For this generation, next generation, can affect spiritual worlds, right? Keep in mind, Adam and Eve eat from the tree of knowledge. Chomp, chomp, chomp. What's the tree of knowledge represents, says Rabbi Chaim Coffman? Without getting into the Kabbalah, all the spiritual worlds. Right? Kabbalah says there are 10 spiritual worlds. That being the case, according to the tree of knowledge, all these spiritual worlds, right? One spiritual world, where's it get its power from? One above it. And the one above that gets the power from the one above it, etc., until you get to the highest. What's the highest level? Where's it getting all its power from? Kisei HaKavod. God's holy throne. Whatever all this means. What's the point? Point is, Adam and Eve ate from the tree, chomp, 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 but nobody says it was an apple. Some say it was wheat. Some say it might have been fig tree, could have been grapevine, whatever, whole discussion on what it was. Right? Regardless, all those spiritual worlds now messed up. Messed up. How do we fix it? What people call tikkun olam. Got to fix up the world. We got to try and bring the world back to where it was before. Before the sin of Adam and Eve. And some people try to fix that in history and they failed. But there was a point in time, just throw this out there. There was a point in time that actually did happen. When did the world get back to where it was before Adam and Eve sinned? That was by Matan Torah, by the giving of the Torah. But what happened? Shortly after giving of the Torah, you have the sin of the golden calf. Didn't last very long. Right? We're still trying to get to that point for the Messiah to come and bring the world back to where it should be. So without getting into all this Kabbalah and different things, what's the point? One act. One act has an effect, ripple effect throughout all history. Now you're going to tell me, okay, that was a pretty significant act. They went against the only commandment God gave them. Right? Don't eat from the tree. So what does God then have to do? Got to throw them out of the garden. Why? Because they might eat from the tree of life. And if they eat from the tree of life, hey, right? You're going to live forever. Can't live forever. Why can't you live forever? Because you have to go in the ground. You have to die. Your body has to decompose. That's part of the atonement process. If they would have eaten from the tree of life, no atonement process. Big problem. So God throws them out. Throws them out of the Garden of Eden. One event, ripple effect. Total ripple effect. But again, death is not a Jewish concept, never should have been. So they go to Egypt. They end up in Egypt through divine providence. They suffer. God has to bring them out early, 190 years early. Otherwise, they would have been destroyed spiritually. And then what does God say to Abraham? God says, not only are these people going to suffer, your offspring's going to suffer. Not only that, what's going to happen? They're going to go down to Egypt, and I'm going to judge their gods. I'm going to judge. Torah doesn't tell me it's Egypt, but we understand that's where they end up. So they go down to Egypt. Why does God judge their gods? They're false gods. If this is what's supposed to be, then couldn't Egypt have a claim and say, what do you want from us? We're doing your will. Who said Egypt had to do it? Who said Egypt had to jump up and say, okay, we're going to take the flag over here. We're going to make them, we're going to make them suffer a lot worse. They went beyond what God wanted them to do. So they pay the price. Right? But again, we don't believe in, let's say, predestination. Because they're going to say, what do you want from me? I was forced. This is what we're supposed to be. Who says, what, you don't have free will? You're a robot? No such thing. We all have free will. Man's the only creature. Has free will. Everything else, programmed. Animals, plants, everything programmed. Can't go outside of the program. Yeah, you can tell me animals can choose. They want to eat, they don't want to eat, whatever, but they are essentially programmed. Then we have one aspect of the soul. What's that aspect of the soul? The nefesh behemoth. Animalistic aspect. Well, don't humans also have the animalistic aspect? Yeah, we have other aspects also. The reality is, we have the ability to think. We have the ability to reason. Right? God blew in the spirit of life. The Aramaic translation says, gave the ruach mamalalo, the ability to speak, to reason, make decisions. Animals don't make decisions. Animals do things based on DNA, based on instinct. That's what they do. They can't change. So now the question is, okay, if that's true, if all this is true, so why does God judge their gods, so to speak? They're false gods. Why does he do that? Because they deserve to be punished. They went beyond what God wanted them to do. They did terrible things. You're going to tell me, quote unquote, they're destined? Who says they're destined? Anyone could have done it. Didn't have to be the Egyptians. Could have been someone else. Could have been the Assyrians. Could have been the Phoenicians. Could have been, who knows? But the Egyptians went too far. They went too far. God says, I'm going to judge them. I'm going to judge their gods. And you're going to come out with great wealth. And I'm going to decimate that whole country. So you see, there's free will over here. They have free will. They pay the price. Can't say, wow, they were destined to do it. Who says? Anybody could have done it. We don't believe in predestination, per se. Right? The soul goes into the body. The soul has to fix up whatever it's doing here. Whatever it's supposed to fix up. Most likely we were all reincarnated souls. So we have to fix up what we're doing here. Whatever that is. But, that's the question. Is there such a Jewish concept as Deja vu? Right? What's the simple answer? No. Why not? Because, one of my rabbis very much steeped in Kabbalah once explained that the soul in this world will not know what it's doing here. It will not manifest itself in that way. So a person won't know. They won't know what their soul looks like, even if they saw a picture, they look in the mirror, they see a picture of the soul, of what the soul is. They're not going to know what it is. They're not going to recognize it. So even if that's true, even if that's what we understand, so the soul, again, as was explained to me, the soul is not going to recognize what it's doing. Not going to know. Impossible. Now, someone can say, what about deep hypnosis? We do know under deep hypnosis, people have spoken under deep hypnosis and said, yeah, where are you right now? They say, I'm in this battlefield and this is going on like 200 years earlier, 500 years earlier, or whatever, right? So that I can't answer. That I don't know. I don't know how that works. That someone under deep hypnosis should be able to say that. Certainly while they're awake, that's an impossibility. That we're not going to know. Impossible to know. Okay. So even if it's impossible to know, we all have a purpose. Whatever that purpose is. We all have something to fix up in this world that our soul has to go through. So therefore, the soul in the body is not going to remember what happened when it was here last or the time before, let's say 200 years ago, 500 years ago, whatever, it's not going to remember. Therefore, a person going to stand in a certain place, go somewhere and say, oh, I remember this from something. Right? That's deja vu. That's what we call deja vu. They remember being in a certain place, in a certain, something. They don't remember the facts, though. For us, that doesn't mean anything. There's no connection to the soul. So that the soul in this world is not going to piece it together. There is no possible way it will piece it together. Someone asked what are the prophet they see in the future. Prophecy, totally different. Totally different. First of all, the prophet's not saying about himself, per se. It's a message divinely given by God for the prophet to give over for that time. Right? Sometimes it's in a puzzle. The prophet's got to get it right, otherwise he gets a death penalty. But normally he loses all faculties. He's more or less like in a trance. Like totally in a trance. Prophecy, something else altogether. We're talking about, a regular human being, not a prophet. In any way, prophecy is God's telling the person either directly, like Moshe Rabbeinu, God spoke face to face, or like every other prophet who's on a much lower level than Moshe, right? Than Moshe Rabbeinu. They're given information. They have to put the information together and give it out. For whatever reason, God wants his information given over. But again, first of all, they're not awake when this happens. This is done when they're in some sort of trance. Usually they say, I saw a vision. That's the language. They saw a vision or, something like that. Moshe Rabbeinu, again, prophecy by him is totally different. Totally different. So prophecy, when God is coming to a prophet, God's giving them a message, and through that message, they're going to give over to the Jewish people. Now, it's a little bit hard to be a prophet. God didn't speak to prophets all the time. It could be once a year, it could be once every 20 years, once every 40 years, something like that. Bottom line, we don't know. By prophet, it's totally different. Why? Very simple. Because God's coming to them in a vision. They lose their faculties. It's like they're no longer in this world. Right? That's the point. Right? That's the point. So when it comes to something like that, so it's not a question the soul recognizes, doesn't recognize. Prophecy, something, something totally different. So someone asked, can a non-prophet receive visions? Right, just on this topic, someone who's not a prophet. Someone who's not a prophet. Today, let's just say we don't have prophets today. There is no prophecy today. There are great rabbis who will say, we will say they have some form of Ruach HaKodesh. What's Ruach HaKodesh? Divine inspiration. There's some level of divine inspiration, which is the lowest level of prophecy. In other words, they're sort of given information they shouldn't have, according to nature. Right? In general. So the Gemara says, that prophecy is it's gone. We don't have prophecy today. Right? It's either given to little children or imbeciles. Right? Or someone who's mentally challenged. Meaning there's no prophecy. There's no such thing. No such thing today. Right? So the question is, okay, what about a non-prophet? Non-prophet is not going to have a vision unless God wants them to see something. Now, I'd use Bilam, as an example. Bilam is considered a non-Jewish prophet. So that doesn't really count. Right? But a person themselves, in general, should they be able to receive visions like this? No. In other words, God coming to them or seeing a vision and giving it over to others? No. Doesn't exist. Stopped thousands of years ago. What about people who have like a sixth sense? And they I don't know, they see ghosts maybe, or spirits. You can bring up spirits. Not allowed to. Right? That is forbidden. 100% forbidden. Ouija boards and all this, and bringing up souls and different things. Even for non-Jews, it would be forbidden. Thank God there's repentance, but it would be forbidden. So how's a person able to do that? Because that's easy. That's tapping into something, using the dark side to tap in. God allows the dark side to exist. He doesn't want you to tap into it, but he allows it to exist. So if that's true and he allows it to exist, you'll get punished if you use it. Doesn't mean you can't, but it's not that hard to do. You say a few incantations. If you know what you're doing, possible. Definitely possible. Is that what God wants? No. 100%. So there are no prophets today. And someone, obviously, who's not a prophet is not getting any of these visions. They can claim. People can make all kinds of claims. But we see by false prophets, we'll make it easy. By false prophets, what do you have? You have exactly that. They give over something. They say, God, God came to them, told them to do this, told them to do that. What's the problem? Non-verifiable. Who they do it in front of. See, the Torah makes the claim, only so-called religion that makes the claim God spoke in front of 600,000 men between the ages of 20 and 60, not including women and children, about 2 to 3 million people. We're the only ones to make that claim. Every other claim was done in front of a few people at best. At best. Right? So any of these people are not prophets. I mean, not only that, you see their books are false in a lot of different ways. Again, not the topic for now, but we see that. We see that's pretty clear. So a non-prophet is not going to have these visions. So what do they have? I don't know. They could be crackpots. Probably most of them are crackpots. But could they use certain things of the dark side in order to have power, let's say, over angels? They could. I'm not saying the Torah says it's good. The Torah says forbidden. The Ramchal and Derech Hashem and the way of God. The Ramchal speaks about spiritual force. And he says, you want to tap into evil, to these things, you can tap in. God brought it to the world, put it into the world. Okay. That mean God is evil? No. He gives the person the ability to choose between right and wrong. You want to choose wrong? Okay. You'll pay a price, serious price. You want to go to the dark side? You can also do that. Have power over angels, other things. Yeah. You're playing with your life. Playing with your life. Spiritual forces are real. Right? To tap in is not that hard. if you know what you're doing. You don't have to be on a high spiritual level. 100% you don't have to be on a spiritual level. But again, it's a test like any other thing. God put it in the world to test man. And if man wants to use it, they have free choice. They can use Ouija boards, they can do other things, but they're going to pay a price. Torah says it's forbidden. Somebody asks, they become a certified ombudsman, that's how you pronounce it, who advocate for people in the nursing home. Okay. They want me to participate in a gift-giving outreach called Silver Bells. It has a Christmas theme. If it's giving gifts, again, if it's a theme, what are we worried about over here? It's idolatry. Something that's idolatrous can't do. Now, are these gifts used for idolatry? Probably not. Even if it's a, I would say even if it's a gift-giving theme, not necessarily idolatrous. I wouldn't say it's idolatrous. It could be, going to the ways of non-Jews and maybe apply to that. Question how far that goes for a non-Jew. Right? But yeah, it certainly doesn't look good. That doesn't look good. Is it forbidden? I wouldn't say it's forbidden. Right? I know here, before the holiday of Sukkot, I see that they sell lights, to put in your sukkah. So anyone who grew up outside of Israel knows they're Christmas lights. Israelis don't know the difference. They don't know what they are, what they represent. So for them, it shouldn't be a problem. Why does it represent anything to them? No, I mean, if someone explained to them what it is, maybe they wouldn't use it, but they're not using it for that. You're gonna say, but it's what it represents. I agree. It doesn't make it idolatrous. Right? Idolatry is something very specific. You're doing something, you're giving something a power it doesn't have. Right? You're worshiping in a way that they worship idols. Many different ways to do that. You can say maybe it's going in the ways of non-Jews. Does that apply to non-Jews? Could. Maybe it's a moral imperative. I would say it's probably not a good thing, but it's certainly not idolatry. Right? That's not an issue. The question is it similar enough? I don't know, it could be. I don't know if it's something that's so egregious. That there's a question that was asked if a person had dishes and there was painting on the dish, regular dish you eat from, and around the rim of the dish is a JC type of scene. Are you allowed to eat from the dish? Right? It's clearly JC, that's what it represents, blah, blah, blah. Are you allowed to eat from the dish? The commentaries say, no, not a problem. Sorry, let's say better. It's not a problem. Why? Because they don't worship it. If it's something, this scene, they would bow down to it, different issue. But here, they don't worship it. Now, question a person could say, well, why would I want to eat from it? Why would I want to eat from it over here? Look what it is. Okay, it's true. That's not the question. Right? The question is it something forbidden? Is it idolatry? It's not idolatry. Why not? Nobody worships the plate. There is a question. Throw this out there also. Right? There is a question, difference of opinion among rabbinic authorities about a cross that someone wears around their neck. Is that considered idolatry? So it depends. If someone would wear it around their neck and someone would bow down to it because of what it represents, that's idolatry. Others say it's not used for that. Doesn't matter, people kiss it, whatever, good luck charm, whatever it is. Doesn't matter. It's not worshipped. If it's not worshipped, then it's not idolatry. Others say no. Others say it has that kind of power. That's what they use it for. So it could depend on the time and the place. Maybe in some places they do worship it, other places they don't. Right? But there's difference of opinion. This, okay, Christmas tree, bells, all these things, it's all a pagan thing. It's all a pagan thing. That's true. But it's not worshipped. If it's something that's worshipped, I understand. Right? Someone's asked me, they have things left over from their kids. They made it in school, when they were younger, bells, I don't know, different things. Different things for that holiday. Are they allowed to keep it in their house? They didn't convert. I don't think they converted. But they want to know, as a non-Jew, are they allowed to keep it in their house? Now, the reality is it's not idolatry. That's not what it is. Shoes is a pagan thing, but it's not idolatry. It's not worshipped. If it would be worshipped, or used as part of a service, a holy wafer, let's say, that's a different issue. That's used as part of a service. That I hear is a problem. That would be forbidden. But the whole thing is like, it's like a custom of the forefathers, not worshiping it. Doesn't have, people put it up there, but they're secular as secular can be. They don't even believe in their own religion, but they put it up there anyway, for whatever reason. Just like Jews who light a Hanukkah menorah. For them, okay. They really know the story about the Greeks. They really know what it represents. They don't know anything. They light the menorah. Right? And some people, I shouldn't laugh. Some people buy a menorah. And the halacha is that if a Jew lights a menorah on Hanukkah, the candles have to be individual candles, and they have to go in a straight line. Why do they have to go in a straight line? Because if they don't go in a straight line, then it can look like a bonfire. Can't have a bonfire. Each candle is its own mitzvah. If each candle is its own mitzvah, then how can you have, they sell all kinds of Judaic shops. They sell menorahs, that they look nice, very fancy, whatever, circular, this, that. Problem is you can't use it for Hanukkah because it doesn't go in a straight line. So again, I'm not saying everybody does this. I'm just saying if someone used that type of menorah, say, well, I lit the candles. After 120 years, God's going to say, you didn't light the candles, right? Forget about lighting them right. It's a whole different, another thing. They lit it in a menorah. You're not allowed to light for Hanukkah. You can light it for the rest of the year, okay? You can't light it for Hanukkah, right? But the irony is, okay, Jews will go to synagogue, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur a little bit maybe, light a Hanukkah menorah, Passover Seder for whatever, and that's it. That's most of the things they do. Right, so here the lighting of Hanukkah menorah, yeah, that's the custom, that's what we do. They have any clue what it means? No. It's a custom of our forefathers. Very nice. So, a nice custom. There's a lot more to it, obviously. But if it's something that doesn't represent anything, and it's certainly not used for idolatry, it shouldn't be a problem. The only question is, even let's say it's 100% not an issue. Let's say. Even if it wouldn't be an issue, is it something I should have in my house? Right? Doesn't matter. It's in the attic, it's in the basement, it's in a box. Probably never going to look at it, once in 20 years, whatever. It's just sitting there in a box. Is that a big deal? Probably not. Probably not. The Torah says you're not allowed to bring an abomination into your house. I.e., you're not allowed to bring idols in your house. Applies to a Jew. Doesn't necessarily apply to a non-Jew. Question is, even if it doesn't apply, should they have it? That's the question. Even if they're never going to be seen. My answer, so these people are going to become Jewish. Let's say get rid of it. Why do you want the past in your house? They didn't have an issue with it. It was sentimental. But if you're cleaning on your house and you get rid of stuff anyway, then get rid of that also. It's not really idolatry, okay? Now, someone said, I just want to keep it for posterity. Can't say it's forbidden. Definitely not forbidden. If if it's not used for idolatry, whatever. It's not forbidden. But not everything that's not forbidden means I should have it. And I should keep it around. I had certain things years ago I got rid of. Books, bad philosophical books, heretical things that you got to get rid of. That 100% you got to get rid of. You don't want in your house. No matter if you don't read them. And no one else is going to see them. You got them buried somewhere. Get rid of it. Right? It goes in the garbage. It's heresy. Got to get rid of it. Something that's not heretical. It's not idolatrous. You can keep it. Would I say it's a good thing to keep? I say get rid of it. People ask, question comes up in this case. People ask, what about New Testament? Am I allowed to keep a New Testament in my house? Now the question is why? So if a person says, listen, I want to use it, and I know these sources, I want to use it and say what the Torah says against it, that's one thing. That's one thing. But in general, you're not going to use it. Why do you have it? Why should you have it? Get rid of it. Even if it's in Hebrew, you can burn it. Even if it's got God's name in it because it doesn't have any holiness. So you can burn it. Get rid of it. Get rid of it means no one else should benefit from it. Let's say better. Someone would ask, can I give it to a family member? No. And other things, get rid of. If it's idolatry, you have to get rid of it. Destroy it. No one can get benefit. Something that's forbidden, get benefit from. So that, rip it apart, flush it, whatever it is, you make sure it's never going to be read by anybody. So there's certain things that goes that far. Other things that are not as bad, again, I would say it's probably better to get rid of. What do you need the remembrance for? You can say, but it's not really forbidden, okay? I'm not going to hammer someone if they have it in their house. I'm not going to say it's an abomination in the house if it's just a bell. It's just a bell or whatever that really doesn't signify anything. It's not idolatrous. Okay, person wants to have it. I'm not going to say not. Right? But the question is it a good thing or not that you should have it? Technically, there's nothing wrong with it. Right? We'll go here live saying there's nothing wrong with it. That's what I would say. Someone here points out, I knew someone was going to ask this, and that is that people are surprised Hanukkah is in part a militaristic holiday. Yeah, that's a major question. Why do I say it's a major question? Because you don't see that the other holidays we celebrate, or in general, why would we celebrate a holiday that has to do with military victory? You can tell me God was behind it. They never should have won the war. They never should have been able to get the Greeks out. The Greeks were the world power. Right? Imagine the Vatican starts off with America. I don't know, they might have nuclear weapons in the Vatican. You never know. Right? Do some spring cleaning. You never know what you might find there. But they're going to start off with America. You think they got a prayer? No pun intended. You think they got a chance in hell they're going to win? Never. 10 times out of 10 they lose. The question that's asked during Hanukkah is how could the Maccabees say we're yeshiva students? How are they going to fight against the world power? What if they would have been killed? Is that suicide? Ooh, good question. It's not called suicide for whatever other reasons. If they would have lost. It was an absolute miracle. True. Right? But the prayer we say in the middle of the Shemona Esrei, silent meditation, whatever you want to call it, that we thank God for the miracle of Purim and the miracle of Hanukkah. Right? The miracle of the prayer itself also speaks about the military victory. But that's not the essence of what it is. The essence of the holiday itself is all spiritual. Because what did the Greeks do? What did the Greeks do? So, why did why did they fight? Why did the Maccabees fight this ragtag bunch of Kohanim? Why did they fight against the world power? At the time, they stuck a pig in the altar, in the temple. They felt they had to, that was it. That was the final straw. And that's what made them go against. That's what made them rise up. So, what else was going on? Jews were becoming Hellenists. Jews were becoming like most Jews today, secular, going in the ways of the world, going in the ways of the Western world, right? And that you got 90%, of Jews today spiritually wiping themselves out, and we live in a non-Jewish world, right? We live in this Greek world. The Greeks aren't here; their culture's here. Education, art, other things. They brought that to the world. Totally brought that to the world. Right? So if that's the case, they brought it to the world. What happens when you go like the Greeks? Now, you got to watch my video on YouTube. It says, don't be like a Greek, or don't be like the Greeks. We're living in that world. And a lot of things in the Torah say, diametrically opposed to that world. We stay away from as much as possible that world. And we're careful who we speak to, and we're careful what we see, what we hear. Interesting, just on this topic, Chazal, the rabbis call a blessed memory, call the Greeks darkness. Right? It boggles the mind. Why do they call the Greeks darkness? Didn't the Greeks bring quote unquote the light to the world? The light of intellectual thoughts, the light of the Renaissance, the light of arts, sports, entertainment, worship of the body. That's what they brought to the world. The same world we're living in. Hasn't changed, right, over the last, thousands of years. We're living in that world. So therefore, why do the rabbis of blessed memory call the Greeks darkness? Because that's what it is. Because there's no light. There's no light of Torah. It's going according to your base desires, right? We're not living in Victorian England anymore. It's going according to your own base desires. You think what's going on today in the world with LGBT, whatever you call it, community, and, transgender and all that, you think this stuff didn't exist in Greece? In Rome? That's what destroyed Rome. Decadence. Totally destroyed Rome, right? I'm going to throw out maybe a Trivial Pursuit question here. I don't know if people still play Trivial Pursuit or not. What's the question? Who knows how Cleopatra of Egypt fame, how did she die? Cleopatra, Mark Antony, right? How did she die? You know how she died? She died because they dropped a horse on her. Bestiality, total prohibition, even for non-Jews. She died because she wanted to have relations with the horse. So they picked this horse up, dropped it on her. Guess what? Splat. I don't know. I want to say it's a good way to go, a bad way to go. I don't know. I'm not even going to go there. We'll keep this clean. That's how she died. Right. The Torah says, don't go in the ways of the Egyptians because they were extremely immoral. We any better? We're not any better. I mean, they would wrestle naked in the gymnasium. Talk about what went on in Greece. See, today it's incredulous. It's incredulous to me that, okay, we have a Torah prohibition of homosexuality. Book of Leviticus chapter 18. Right? You go through 23, 24 verses there that we read on the afternoon service of Yom Kippur about immorality. What do we see? It says homosexuality is forbidden. Bestiality is forbidden. Now, why would the Torah say something? You say, well, isn't that obvious? Torah, Torah tells you things that are obvious too. But Torah says, I understand what man is going to do. I understand what their, power is. So you're going to say, come on, bestiality, not so in vogue today. How many people practicing it? I don't want to know. It's probably not a huge percentage. Probably not. Well, why do I bring this up? Because it's absolutely incredulous to me that people are going to do this deviant behavior. That's what it is. It's deviant. Why is it deviant? Because the Torah tells me clear. If I didn't have Torah, then you call me a racist and a homophobe and all this, right? Why? Because the Torah tells me in the book of Genesis, the person's going to get married, you're going to cling to your wife. Doesn't say you're going to cling to another guy. And then the Torah tells me later, that's forbidden. The act itself is forbidden. Now, how do I know it has nothing to do with sorcery, even though there's a verse right before it talks about, right after it talks about sorcery, right? Someone wanted to claim, say, see, it's only about sorcery and idolatry. Homosexuality is forbidden, but, a person has a point because there's a juxtaposition of verses. So we always say, can learn something why the verses are the way they are in the order that they are. But I would say you can't take one verse out of context and tell me I got 21 out of 22 or 22 out of 23 verses that speak about who you're not allowed to be with, who you're not allowed to marry, right? Immoral relationships. So if I have 21 out of 22 or 22 out of 23 verses that are telling me it's forbidden to act in such a way for a Jew or some things for a non-Jew because it's immoral, and the Torah says forbidden relationships, how can you tell me one verse uproots 23? I hear the question. Not going to say I don't hear the question. That's a problem. 21 out of 22 verses. And I got one verse. You have to understand the context. I agree. Why is it talk about sorcery over there? I agree. That has to be addressed. I'm not going to get there now either. That has to be addressed. But you can't tell me I'm going to take one verse totally out of context and tell me the other 22 verses don't mean spit. Don't mean anything. They're all talking about the same thing. So I remember first video I did for Tanakh Talk on controversial issues was about homosexuality. And somebody asked this question in the chat, in one of the comments. Someone asked that question. Now it's only talking about sorcery. So only, sorcery and idolatry. So homosexuality is not forbidden only for that. And my answer was just what I said now. How can you take that totally out of context? I agree. There's a juxtaposition of verses. True. So the question is, what's that verse in idolatry or sorcery doing there? Good question. But the answer is it doesn't uproot all the other verses. You can't tell me it uproots 22 verses or 21 verses that have to do with immorality. That makes no sense. There is an explanation. Not saying not, but that's not. You can't. It's like it's like the Messianics. What the Christians do, they cherry pick. They'll say things against the rabbis and the Talmud. Oh, we hate non-Jews and pedophilia in the Talmud and all these things. I just did a whole bunch of videos on Tanakh Talk on these issues. What do? They take things way out of context and they cherry pick. One thing, I'll just mention one thing. One thing they bring up is, hey, the Talmud says you're not allowed to save a non-Jew on Shabbos. If the non-Jew is drowning on Shabbos, you don't save him. Oh, we hate non-Jews. No offense to any non-Jews listening. Oh, we hate non-Jews. We wouldn't save them on Shabbos. Well, guess what? That is not the whole point of what the Talmud says. What is the point of what the Talmud says over there? The point of what the Talmud says for half a page or more is I'm only allowed to save a Jew. I'm only allowed to save a Jew if we know he's going to keep Shabbos. He's going to keep future Shabbos. If he's not going to keep future Shabbos, he's a secular Jew, so I can't save him. I shouldn't be allowed to save him. Now, the halacha is I save him anyway. Now, this person could repent and whatever, but you have to save him for other reasons. Definitely for other reasons as well, a non-Jew as well. But if you go through this page of Talmud, and 3/4, 90% or more of this whole discussion is about how am I allowed to save the Jew? And then out of nowhere, the question comes in, what about a non-Jew? Non-Jew doesn't keep Shabbos. Not allowed to keep Shabbos. Right? They're not in the process of conversion in general. So if that's true, I shouldn't be allowed to save a non-Jew, even though that's not the halacha. So what do? They say, see, you're not allowed to save a non-Jew on Shabbos. That's disgusting. That's racist. What's the Gemara talking about? The Gemara's not saying we hate non-Jews. We're not going to save them. There's no reason to save them. They don't keep Shabbos, blah, blah, blah. It comes in as like thrown as an afterthought. 90% of the Talmud is asking why are you allowed to save a Jew on Shabbos? No, why am I not allowed to save a non-Jew? Flip the script. See, one of my personal pet peeves. If you're going to fight, at least fight fair. If you're going to quote something, okay, quote what's behind it. Quote me what's going on. Don't take it out of context. And they'll say, oh, come on. They ask if a 3-year-old has relations, they want to marry a Kohen, they're not. This is like, oh, that's disgusting. How could that happen? Well, they don't tell you, there's another Gemara that says that someone at the age of 6, way back when, could have children. So what does that mean? It means when they were 3, that's a whole different ballgame. We're not talking about a 3-year-old today. You're right, that wouldn't make any sense. I agree. But if women could give birth, they would mature much earlier. Even at the age of 6, they could have children. Well, don't you think this is a legitimate question? Not talking about, So you say, okay, so this 3-year-old could have the status of a 12-year-old, of a 15-year-old. Oh, they ain't thinking about that. See, they don't know that other Gemara. They're gonna quote Webster's 5th definition over here. Sorry, and one other thing, just on that topic, they'll say, we don't hold by the rabbis anything. We don't hold anything they say. Of course you do. You just pick and choose. No, it's not true, this, that. Okay, what's the knockout blow? What is the checkmate blow? Over here, you know what the checkmate blow is? Their own New Testament, King James. King James himself. Now, everybody knows. Well, if you don't know, you find out now. If you read a Torah scroll, it's got no vowels. So how do we know what the words say? The only reason we know what the words say is because the rabbis put vowels. They put vowels for the words. So now, if a Messianic, a Christian, whatever, is going to tell me, we don't hold anything by the rabbis. This you have to. How are you going to know what the words say? The Torah tells me 3 times, you're not allowed to cook a calf in its mother's chet lamed beis. What's chet lamed beis? It could be chalif. What's chalif? Forbidden fats. Then every yeshiva wouldn't be able to serve food because they cook everything in fats and oil and different things, right? So what would that mean? I can't eat. Won't be able to eat anything. Does it mean forbidden fats? Or do you put the vowels, het lamed beis, you say chalav. What is chalav? Milk. That's how we translate it. Can't cook a calf in its mother's milk. I.e. can't eat milk and meat together. Oh, how do I know that? Because rabbis told me that's what it means. So it took somebody months before they finally admitted, okay, Rabbi, you got me. I pick and choose. I said, thank you very much. You made my day. You admitted you pick and choose. But I don't think, it doesn't matter what you don't think. You can disagree with the rabbis. You can say whatever you want. Bottom line, you have to hold at least what the rabbis say by the vow. At least admit it. If you're not going to admit it, then I got a problem. Because you can't say, I never do this. Not true. So in that case, what do we say? What do we say? You can't cherry pick here. Your person learns something. Doesn't matter if it's in Tanakh, whatever it is. You got to think about what's being said. You got to see what the commentaries tell you. You got to see the context. If you don't see the context, I can make anything up I want. Like this Freemason gave me all these verses all over Tanakh telling me that angels have free will. I said, good, we'll make a show on that on Tanakh Talk also. Have a lot of fun with that. Did a bunch of verses. I would have been drunk, stoned, and who knows what. Come up with crazy explanations. 99% of all the cases that we looked at had to do with context. Yeah. Somebody asks, why Moshe Rabbeinu speaks in the first person in the book of Deuteronomy? Yeah, the whole question. Some say that Deuteronomy is a whole different book. Why? It's not the same structure. Not the same structure as the other books. That's certainly what the biblical critics, will say. And they'll say that Moshe Rabbeinu said it himself. Right, through himself. That's the question. Why is he speaking in the first person? Right? So simple explanation is, not so simple. Why is he speaking in the not only that, but he speaks about a lot of mitzvahs that he repeats mitzvahs. Now, normally, Torah doesn't repeat anything for no reason. So it has to be that Torah's repeating it because what's the Torah telling me? Something else, some other aspect of the mitzvah we didn't know before. Otherwise, the Torah wouldn't repeat things for no reason. So commentaries tell us Moshe Rabbeinu speaks in the first person. It was all done through Ruach HaKodesh. It doesn't say God spoke to Moshe, Moshe say this, that, and the other thing. It's not like the other books. True. Right? So some people will say, well, Moshe Rabbeinu said it himself. Now that could be heresy. How can you say Moshe Rabbeinu said it himself? Can't add or subtract to the Torah. Can't make it up as he goes along. Right? So the commentaries say no. It wasn't God speaking to him like the Torah says, whatever that speech was, that it says by the Be'er Hashem El Moshe Lemor, that God spoke to Moshe saying, or God spoke to Moshe and Aaron saying, whatever the case is, doesn't say that. But where did Moshe Rabbeinu get this information from? Why does it say it on his own? It's not on his own. Where does it come from? Divine inspiration. That divine inspiration, where did it come from? Came from God himself. So yeah, it's a little bit strange. He speaks in the first person, right? But that's the explanation, or one of the explanations. Someone says the only prophet's going to come and announce the coming of the Messiah is Elijah himself, right? Right? We don't have prophets. There will be no prophets till that time. Elijah's going to come. Everyone's going to know he's Elijah the prophet, and he's going to announce the coming of the Messiah. That's his job. That's going to be his job to do. Going to announce the coming of the Messiah, and then the Messiah is going to come. Someone asked, I have a book called Divine Comedy. It sounds like a total oxymoron, like military intelligence. Similar to Homer's Odyssey. Yeah, that's probably a good thing to get rid of. Yeah, I wouldn't say you don't have to burn it, but yeah, it's definitely a good thing to get rid of. Let me see other questions here. Someone asks, chickens are scavengers. Who says chickens are scavengers? No, what are chickens eat? Whatever you feed them. Right? Can they eat? Sometimes they end up eating, their cousins or whatever. They grind them up and give them as chicken feed. We're not going to get gross here. Right? Whatever. So whatever they eat, we can eat the chicken. That's not a problem. They're not carnivorous because they're not carnivorous. We don't eat carnivorous animals. Right? We don't eat animals that stalk their prey. We eat animals that eat vegetation. I mean, what do chickens eat? They eat vegetation. I mean, it can eat worms, other things. Doesn't make it non-kosher. Definitely doesn't make it non-kosher. Because in any case, whatever they eat just gets digested or whatever, so it goes out anyway. So it wouldn't be a kashrus issue. Definitely not a kashrus issue. But again, we only eat animals that basically eat vegetation. We don't eat animals that are carnivores. And one of the reasons, even if science hasn't proven it, One of the reasons is because by a Jew, the blood is the soul of an animal. So certainly, and I guarantee by the non-Jews, they don't clean out all the blood, for sure not. So you're definitely eating blood, which is prohibition, I think, even for non-Jews as well. But that being the case, that if a Jew eats what they're not supposed to, i.e. a carnivorous animal, it can have a negative effect on their soul. Now, does that mean we're going to start being predators and this and that? We don't know how that works. It's one possible answer why we keep kosher. There are myriad other answers, right? But science has not proven that's true. But Coffman always says, doesn't matter what science says. Many things science has not proven. They'll swear by it, but it's not proven. But if it's not proven, doesn't mean it's not true. Just like if I know certain things are true, even let's say I could prove, and I did a bunch of these videos on Tanakh Talk also, proof of God's existence and why we believe the Torah is true. If I could prove, let's say 60% of the Torah to be true, factual, with different things, papyrus, other things, whatever it is. Let's say I could prove 60%. If I could prove 60%, the other 40%, that means the Torah is not true? That means the other things haven't been proven. Okay. But I have 60%. Imagine the example I would give is if I'm playing roulette and I know 60% of the time black 13 comes up or red 13 comes up. I'm going to be a very rich man. Even if it's 60%. Even if it's 60%. So what? If it's higher, be even richer. 100% be even richer. But someone told me it's the only a Jew can make such a claim. You could prove me 99% it's true. I got 1% free will. I can say it's not true. I said, but if I 99% I could prove to you it's true, how could you say you have 1% free will? It's 99%. You're right, it's not 100%. If I could prove something 60%, 70%, that's good enough. Right? But this wouldn't affect non-Jews in any way. Why? Because non-Jews are not affected by what they eat. As we mentioned many times, book of Leviticus chapter 11. The commentaries there says about kashrus that you see non-Jews eat all kinds of things. Creepy crawly things, who knows what, maybe except for the bats and Wuhan, but okay, they eat all kinds of crazy things. Doesn't affect them negatively. In other words, they'll get sick from it. Doesn't seem to have any effect on them. So, commentary says, so if a non-Jew is not affected by it, why would they do it? They're only going to do something that is beneficial for them. So if it's not beneficial for them, they wouldn't do it. So, in this case, it doesn't matter because chickens are not scavengers. Right? They're definitely not scavengers. So, and they're certainly not carnivores by any stretch. And even if you tell me they're eating ground up chicken anyway, so they're ground up, it's not like, that's a different issue. I mean, totally different issue. But in either case, it doesn't matter. It's not going to have any effect. So we don't know why God said eat these animals, don't eat these animals. Or eat these, these things and not these other things. Okay? We don't know. There are myriad possibility of answers. Doesn't mean it's the answer. Right? I just gave one possible answer. We are what we eat, but it hasn't been proven. Imagine 1700s, 1600s before microscopes. The scientists are telling you about what do you call it, about a cell and how the cell works and this and that. So could they see the cell? No. You're going to say it's blind faith. Well, not blind faith because it's based in science. It can be proven through science. Okay, let's say that's true. So what? It's still a leap of faith over here. They didn't see it. But because they didn't see it, there's another reason to believe why it's true. So also people think religion is all about a leap of faith. You got to believe. No, that's for the Christians. Our belief is based on knowledge, based on a lot of things. It's not based on a leap of faith, because a lot can be proven, not in theory, can be proven factually. And if that's the case, there is no doubt. People don't want to look at the information, but there is no doubt. We have no doubts. There are things we don't understand. We don't understand fully many, a lot of things. Okay. It doesn't mean it didn't happen. Again, we use the Talmud as a case. The Talmud says that women, in the time of Abraham or later, gave birth at the age of 6, the age of 7. So you got to tell me today everything changed. Today's a totally different generation, and generations have changed since then. Okay? So the Talmud says it doesn't mean it's not true. Torah doesn't mean it's not true. Right? But, you got to throw something out there and say, oh, a 3-year-old, this and that. In today's standard, you're right. That's called pedophilia. That's a horrific thing. But if you're talking about a 15-year-old, I still don't necessarily think it's a good thing. But there are people practicing sex at younger ages than that. But even so, a 15-year-old is different than a 5-year-old, than a 10-year-old. So if that's the case and they have the ability to have children, it's not so far-fetched. So we can't get caught up in the idea that, well, we don't have concrete proof for this. So there are things we don't have concrete proof for, okay? Or no proof at all. So what? If I have enough proof, I would say all I need is 51%. And that would be enough. Even less than that. If I had 20% proof, wouldn't that change someone's life? 20%, let's say, could be proven. That's totally true. That's not insignificant. I would say higher number is much more significant, okay? But even that is a pretty significant thing. So it's not about I believe. It's based on evidence. You have to evaluate evidence. What's the problem? Like I told this guy, listen, you ever write term paper? I had to do that. I was a history major. Write all these term papers. Right? So I said, well, I tell you write a term paper. It says write a thesis. You spend the body of the paper proving it, and then you go to conclusion. I said, great. What would happen if you had contradictory proofs and you left a conclusion in doubt? He said, you can't do that. So why not? I said, you'll fail. So I said, so basically you're telling me you're going to bring in evidence. You're going to evaluate the evidence and see if the evidence is true. But it's a ludicrous statement to say, I got 1% free will. But I just proved to you 99%. How can you say 1% matters? How can you say 1% matters? 1% doesn't matter. 1% is totally irrelevant. I would say 30% is irrelevant. Because I got 70% proof. Got a lot of different proofs. You don't want to look at it, okay? But you have to evaluate evidence. Now, some people will, say, oh, it's not good enough evidence. Come up with a million excuses. A million excuses. Why? Why? You get plenty of Christians. How do you explain this? Oh, we got this answer. Does that make any sense? Is that rational? You say, well, what about this? What about that? Oh, it's a good question. Doesn't matter. We live with contradictions. That's not an answer. If there's a contradiction, find me an answer. Explain it to me. Explain to me that it makes sense. No, but this. No, but no. Show me it makes sense. I can tell you 80% of the Torah doesn't make sense. That's one proof it had to be by God. Because no human being is going to write something that's going to be so complicated in general that no one's going to want to keep it. It won't make any sense. Give me 5 laws, 10 laws that are easy to do. Now, someone's going to say, that's not a proof that God did it. I'm not saying it's full proof. Think about the idea. Many other things. That's not the topic for now either. Right? But, many other ideas that's why the Torah had to be written by God. And it couldn't be by a human. So Someone asked, can camels be raised on grain as well? It had nothing to do with it. Camels only have one sign that they're kosher. You need two signs. You need to have split hooves and chewits cut. Right? This is another proof God had to write the Torah. Because what do you think? Moshe Rabbeinu was Dr. Doodle and he could talk with the animals? You think he knew every single animal all over the world? How do you know? How do you know there are certain animals that chewits cut doesn't have split hooves or vice versa? How in the world would he know such a thing? He wouldn't. Right? Another seemingly proof it had to be from God. Because, and not only that, the Torah says a fish to be kosher has scales and fins. Means if it has scales, it'll have fins. If it has fins, it'll have scales. If you see that a fish has scales and not fins, then the Torah can't be true. You don't have that. Now, you might tell me certain fish, you don't see the scales. There's a king clip fish. The scales are underneath the skin. You don't really see them. Question is it kosher? It's not kosher. No discussion. Or, I think swordfish sheds its scales when it comes out of the water. Different things. But the Torah tells you if it has scales, it'll have fins. How would Moshe Rabbeinu know such a thing? He lived in one area in the world. How many people would he would have to pay, go all over the world, all over the oceans, and come to this conclusion? Right? Seemingly the laws of kashrus make no sense in general. And this small amount of exceptions, how is the person going to know that? I mean, you want to tell me he was Dr. Doodle? Good luck. Good luck at that. It doesn't matter if they're raised on grain. What do I care? It's a non-kosher animal. Finished. Someone asked, what is Man Bashan? I'm not sure what the reference is to. Let me see. See one thing here. See what the reference is. See if I find anything here. One second. Yeah, it says in Psalms, interesting. It says in the book of Psalms, where is it? In Psalms chapter 68, verse 16. It says, of the mountain of God, the mountain of Bashan. What is the mountain of Bashan? So it's brought down from the Medrash. God wanted to give the Torah to Israel. And Carmel came from Espamia. Tavor came from Beit Elim. One said I'm going to call it Mount Tavor. Actually, Mount Tavor, very interesting. When I go up north, it's right near Tiberias. It's Mount Tavor. And it will be fitting for the Shekhinah, for God's presence, to rest upon me because I'm higher than all the other mountains. And I'm higher than all the other waters. Right? On the flood, because I'm higher, so the flood didn't affect me. And the other one said I was called Mount Carmel. Why? And that the Torah should be fitting to be given on me, that God should be rest upon me, because I was in the middle. I was in the middle when the Jews crossed the sea. So what did God say? Both disqualified. Why? Because you're both haughty. You're both being conceited. Right? All the mountains began to thunder and collapse, as it stated in Judges chapter 5, verse 5. Mountains quaked at the presence of the Lord. And God said, why are you looking in such a way? Why do you wish to be judged with Mount Sinai, etc.? And because all these mountains had this haughtiness, so to speak, God gave the Torah Mount Sinai. So there are a bunch of mountains. This is a whole thing I'm not going to get into, but it goes into these various mountains, and it basically saying that they're being haughty, they're being conceited. So Mount Bashan can also be reference to Mount Hermon, which is in Sfas, all the way up north. But it's a mountain that saw that it was worthy to give the Torah upon. right? That's what the reference is. Someone asked, what's the rose of Sharon? And the prayer after Tehillim, the prayer you say after citing Tehillim. Let's see. See if I find anything here. The rose of the valley, that's what it really means. It says in Song of Songs. It means, some say here it means to blossom forth, root down. Right? Question exactly what this type of flower is. It's a rose, it's a lily, a tulip, some other things. It says that the wilderness shall rejoice and blossom like the rose. As it says in Isaiah 35, verse 1 and 2. Or it could be person rising themselves to the sunlight of glory, redemption. Because the word for valleys over here, it means the depths, so to speak. Right? What's that's the reference. That's the reference there. One second here. Let me bring this up. Yeah, it says, let me see if I find it here. Again, it could be just a reference of, giving forth, springing forth from the depths of your heart. I think that's what it represents. Yeah. Any other questions? Why is Rabbi Binyamin almost wiped out? Because of the severity of what they did. They took this prostitute and cut her up and everything else, and it was a pretty severe prohibition. So because it's a pretty severe prohibition, what they did, so God came along and almost wiped them out and stopped right before doing that. But because it was an absolutely severe thing that they did. A separate refrigerator is absolutely necessary for meat and dairy. No. Some people have the custom, they put milk and dairy products on different shelves, milk and meat products on different shelves. If, let's say, they're in plastic containers, they're not going to drip over. I can put them on the same shelf. Not a problem, right? Obviously, you're not going to put something in the fridge that's going to be piping hot. So once it cools down, also not going to be a problem, even if they touch each other. If they ooze one into the other, you can wash it off and eat it, right? But you don't need separate refrigerators. Definitely don't need separate refrigerators for that. Yeah. Any other questions? Someone asked, they heard a story, a man that was not Jewish, but he sent his kids to Hebrew school. That means his kids become Jewish? No, they have to go through conversion. If they weren't Jewish, there are schools that will take children before they convert in their schools. Right? I mean, there are places that even if the wrong parent is Jewish, they'll have their kids go through Hebrew school and have quote unquote a bar mitzvah. It doesn't mean they're Jewish. The only thing that's going to make someone Jewish is if their mother's Jewish or they go through conversion. If neither of those things are met, doesn't matter how much Torah they learned. And again, I'm going to get thrown under the bus here. People say, but I'm very, very Jewish in the heart more than most Jews. That doesn't mean anything. No offense. Doesn't mean anything. Either you're a Jew, you converted, you're born a Jew from a Jewish mother, or you converted. Anything in your heart doesn't mean anything. Good intention, okay, it's worth something, doesn't make you Jewish. Is it true Binyamin was a werewolf? Not that I know of. Right? I think that's a say an old wives' tale. I don't know. The blessing is called a predatory wolf, right? Which doesn't mean, it doesn't mean that necessarily he's a werewolf. It means he's predatory than anyone else. Someone here mentions, interesting. There's a commentary. I don't know who this person is. There's a certain commentary states that Binyamin was a werewolf. Right, the fear that he would die, leave his father, and he would turn back into a werewolf and be killed in self-defense by some person. Don't know. It's usually a metaphor, right? It's usually a metaphor. Some say actually that Ishmael, right, is called a para Adam, a wild man, a wild ass of a man. He's called, according to one explanation, is a werewolf. Because Cooney brings out. I don't know. Someone brings that the men of the Dor HaFlaga, those who participate in the Tower of Babel were punished by being turned into werewolves. Rabbi Yehuda Chassid in Sefer Chassidim mentions werewolves and dragons, how to avoid them. So they exist. It doesn't necessarily mean Binyamin was one of them. It could be. Even if the source says it, it's very strange. Very, very strange. Normally, when we say that it was called a predatory predatory wolf, it's an allegory, right? It's definitely an allegory. Saying someone who let's say, is predatory in other people, right? Preys on other people. Doesn't necessarily mean he's a wolf, right? I'm not, again, I just saw quickly that, there are some that say such a thing. It's very strange. It's not the norm. Definitely not the norm. Doesn't mean they don't exist. Demons we know, we definitely know did exist. There are other forces as well, but to say Binyamin was on, that's more, most commentaries are going to say it's more of a allegory, what it means, what it represents, not that he was actually turned into a werewolf. But I'm not saying there's no such opinion that says he was. There are some that say he was. So they're going to say what's true. I would say that the former is true, meaning that is not. It's just it's an allegory. It's an allegory. It's something to explain predatory practices. Doesn't mean he was a werewolf. Someone asks, can Noahide children attend yeshivas? That's for Jews, right? We are working on learning centers for Noahides, but not I wouldn't say a traditional yeshiva, no, but certainly something we're trying to work on and setting up, Noahide places. Yeah, but definitely not yeshivas. Someone asks, if my matrilineal ancestry is Jewish, then you're Jewish. If it can be proven, you would need a what do you call it? A marriage document from either parents, grandparents, great grandparents, from your mother's side, or at least 4 generations buried in a Jewish cemetery to prove, Jewish ancestry, which both things are probably going to be hard to produce. So therefore, you probably have to go through conversion anyways. I've dealt with a number of students that probably had Jewish ancestry, but they couldn't prove it. Even if they were converted, they're still Jewish. Yeah. If you know that the mother was Jewish, if you know your mother was Jewish, or your grandmother was Jewish, even if they converted to Christianity, it's still Jews. So that would make that, if it's on your mother's side, that would make you Jewish also. That doesn't matter what they converted to. A Jew's still a Jew. What is Sheol? It's considered Gehenna, hell as we understand it. Yeah, someone asks, they heard one of Jacob's sons at super speed, right? Right, that is brought down. That is definitely brought down. There's a whole, when Yaakov died, Esav came to complain and say that he should inherit or whatever, and they had a document from Egypt, and one of the sons, was going to run down there and bring it back. Hushan ben Dan was deaf. He couldn't understand what was going on, that Yaakov should be buried, and he did the right thing. He clubbed Esav, killed him, knocked his head, landed on Yaakov's lap, which Medrash says Yaakov, opened his eyes and smiled, and he got buried. That's why they say Esav's head was buried in the cave of the patriarchs, because his body totally destroyed him, but his head was okay. It's just his body, because of desire, destroyed him. Yeah, I'm going to stop. I'm going to stop there. I do this every Tuesday and Thursday to 10 o'clock Eastern time, 5 o'clock Israel time. Anyone has any questions, find me on Facebook at Michael Chaim Coffman, or beyond Orthodox Conversion Judaism. You can send me an email, Rabbi Chaim Coffman at gmail.com, RBBICHAIMCOFFMAN at gmail.com. Wish everyone a good beginning of the day, middle of the day, or end of the day, depending where you are.